From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Claire Harvey. It's Wednesday, October 1, 2025. A complete Hamas surrender and the return of all hostages in return for the release of Palestinian prisoners. That's the core of a 20-point peace deal announced by Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu with the blessing of Arab and Muslim leaders. But what's in it for Hamas? And does it have any hope of working? Today, our foreign editor Greg Sheridan joins me for his characteristically acerbic and hilarious assessment of what happens now.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of the State of Israel.
It's called peace in the Middle East.
We will have permanently ended the war.
So the hostages are coming back.
You are the greatest friend that Israel has ever had in the White House.
So it would be headed by a gentleman known as President Donald J. Trump of the United States.
This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way. But it will be done.
Greg Sheridan is The Australian's foreign editor. Greg, we all know Donald Trump likes a winner. It looks to me like Benjamin Netanyahu is the winner here. What's your read of it?
Well, it's a very, very good deal if it goes ahead, and the Palestinians would be crazy to reject it. It's the best deal they're ever going to get. But I don't think it will happen. Trump is a tremendous impresario of these White House events, but he hasn't been that good on the follow-through. You remember the summit with Vladimir Putin that Trump had only a few weeks ago, and nothing at all has happened. Trump has accomplished quite a few things already in this deal. He's got the Gulf Arab states on board, which is remarkable, but to do that, he got Benjamin Netanyahu to apologise to Qatar for conducting an operation on their territory and promised not to do it again. Well, I've been covering Netanyahu for many decades, and let me tell you, you don't get many apologies out of Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump has done a traditional American thing there, which is to reassure the Gulf states, and that normally empowers them to be more forthcoming to Israel. Now, he's given Netanyahu an off-ramp from this military campaign if Hamas comes to the party. So Netanyahu would be able to stop the major military operations, and if the extreme right in his government deserted him, probably he would get enough support from the centrist parties still to get the peace plan accepted. But the extreme right might just have the wit to stick with something that Trump offers them. The ridiculous premature recognition of Palestine by a number of states, including Australia, had led to a huge move within Israel to annex part of the West Bank. It was, as we all predicted, 1,000,000% counterproductive, but Trump seems to have stopped Netanyahu from that, so that's an achievement for Trump. And now it's the best deal the Palestinians will ever get because it involves the United States directly in their future prosperity. This is certainly the best chance the Palestinians have had in a generation to get something productive. America is certainly not talking about permanent colonialism in Gaza. They're talking about a big international effort to restore, rebuild and reform Gaza. But the Palestinian leadership in its long history has never missed a chance to miss a chance. And Hamas, of course, has to go out of business to accept this deal. So probably they won't, but it's deeply unpredictable.
Who would be able to convince Hamas to surrender, do you think, Greg? Or is it going to be a matter of Hamas taken out of there by members of this international stabilisation force that Trump is talking about?
No one can force Hamas to surrender. Hamas is a death cult infused with terrorist ideology, inspired by Iran, profoundly committed to the Salafist, Islamist, extreme view of the world, in which Jews are a primordial enemy of all Muslims. And from Hamas's point of view, they like what's happened. They don't mind that there are tens of thousands of Palestinians dead. That's fine with them. They want Israel to be isolated internationally. So the International Stabilisation Force only comes into existence if Hamas surrenders. Indeed, the International Stabilisation Force is one of the long-term weak points of the deal, although I think it's the best thing on offer. Now, this deal, if Hamas rejects it, isolates Hamas instead of Israel. So that's another quite significant judo accomplishment by Trump, really. He's turned around the dynamic of international politics all on his own. No one can force him to surrender. No one can force him to do anything. And they are being, in this deal, offered amnesty and safe passage out of Gaza. So they don't even have to give themselves up to death, but they have to give up all power and they have to give up the lingering leverage of these probably 20-odd living hostages whom they continue to torture and mistreat. So Hamas has to behave like reasonable human beings, but there is no evidence so far that they have that within them.
All these problems seem like the same problems that have stopped peace since October 7, 2023. What is different about this deal? Why have Arab and Muslim states agreed to it? Why has Netanyahu agreed to it when they haven't agreed before?
Well, there have been several ceasefires before, several ceasefire proposals that Israel has agreed to and Hamas has refused. But then Hamas never wanted the peace deal, so they found an excuse to pull away from it at the last minute. Now, what's different this time? Well, a couple of things. First of all the Arab states, the Gulf states, and indeed other big Muslim majority states like Pakistan and Indonesia and Turkey have endorsed the deal. That's quite an accomplishment of American statecraft. Iran is much weaker than it was before. It can't exercise the same leadership over Hamas that it once did. Hezbollah is out of the equation. The Palestinian people in Gaza have suffered utterly, horrendously, appallingly, terribly. And I am critical of Israel's actions in the last 6 months. Even though Israel has a right to wage war on Hamas, I think in the last 6 months there's been so little military benefit out of it. Now, Israel will eventually hunt down every last Hamas member in Gaza and kill them if the war goes on. But there must be now pressure from the Palestinian people, although Hamas always holds its own people in complete contempt. You know, when those people bravely had anti-Hamas demonstrations in Gaza, they were rounded up and beaten or killed. So they don't care about Palestinian opinion. But you've got the whole Arab world, the whole Muslim world except Iran. The Palestinian people all want an end to this. Israel is prepared to offer an end to this on reasonable terms. They have a partial withdrawal and they allow the administration of Gaza to go over to an international authority. But the long-term prospect of having the Americans take on Gaza's rebuilding and prosperity as an American project is just fantastic and unbelievably rare in the Trump White House. So the Palestinians would be absolutely crazy to reject this. But on the other hand, the Palestinians have rejected clear, concrete, generous offers of statehood at least 4 times in the past, if you also count their rejection of the original partition. Unlike the fatuous, nonsensical, idiotic, brainless, hollow burblings of our own government in Australia, Trump has offered both an incentive, a positive incentive. We're going to help you rebuild a prosperous Gaza. And he's offered a penalty. If you don't do it, we back Israel's military action. Trump doesn't deal in sort of kumbaya statements of kindness and goodness. He's offering them a good deal. If they don't take it, there are terrible consequences.
There's a real sense of New York real estate about this, Greg. And I've wondered, is this what the Middle East has been lacking for the past couple of thousand years, is a bit of sort of Manhattan property developer energy? Point 1 of the 20-point plan is Gaza will be a de-radicalised, terror-free zone. Point 2 is Gaza will be redeveloped for the benefit of the people in Gaza. I mean, we're all imagining condominiums on the Mediterranean, of course. But in all seriousness, is there something about Donald Trump that is the magic factor here?
I don't want to say that, Claire, because the deal has not been delivered. So he is now offering a very good deal. This is Trump at his best. But previous presidents haven't been idiots. You know, Bill Clinton negotiated a fantastic offer of a state under the Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. The Palestinians were offered a state on 93 or 95% of the West Bank, plus compensating territory from Israel proper, the whole of Gaza, and a capital in East Jerusalem. Now, that is the absolute maximal dream that any Palestinian state could ever aspire to, and they basically walked away from the deal. And Bill Clinton's chief advice to George W. Bush when the handover came was, don't trust Yasser Arafat because he'll lie to you every time he opens his mouth. So it's not as if this is a unique Trump genius. I think this is what the Americans do at their best. They put incentives and penalties on the table. Trump is an unsentimental and brutal realist, and that's a big advantage. I think Barack Obama was misled by his own idealism or his own view of the ease of human nature. The less you know about the Middle East, the easier it is to solve. The closer you are to it, the more intractable and difficult it is. And even this deal, good as it is, I predict on balance the Palestinians will reject it. Hamas will find a way of killing it because they have no interest in peace. You know, there was peace before October 7th. There was a ceasefire. Gaza was getting $1 billion a year in aid from Qatar or one of the Gulf states. Thousands upon thousands of Gazans were free to work in Israel proper every day. There was economic development. There are condominiums in the West Bank. You know, if you go to Ramallah, there are all kinds of brand outlet stores and all the rest of it. The Israelis and the Americans have always wanted the Palestinians to have something they don't want to lose. That's part of the stakes of peace. But the terrorists within the Palestinian movement and fueled from outside the Palestinian movement by the likes of Iran and Hezbollah always want to destroy that dream. They don't want peaceful coexistence with Israel. So it'll be interesting to see how the balance of forces resolves the Palestinian decision in this moment.
I think, Bibi, I mean, depending on you, I think we probably shouldn't take questions, or would you like to take a question or two from perhaps a friendly Israeli reporter, if there's such a thing?
That's a very, very tough proposition. But I would think, Mr. President, that I would go by your instinct that this is, we'll have enough time for questions. Let's settle the issue first.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Coming up, so how does Tony Blair fit into the picture? I'm curious about the Tony Blair factor here, Greg.
And one of the people that wants to be on the board is the UK former Prime Minister, Tony Blair. Good man, very good man. And some others.
Since leaving office in 2007, he's been a Middle East envoy. It's kind of become a real calling for him to try and get a solution here. I mean, he does have some runs on the board with the Good Friday and finally bringing peace between Northern Ireland and the United Kingdom. What's your sense of Blair's role so far in this and what it means that he's supposedly going to be involved in this board of peace?
I think it's useful. I wouldn't overstate it. And nobody in international relations is really a magician. Not Henry Kissinger, not Tony Blair, not Donald Trump, not Richard Holbrooke. Blair is very capable and he has a lot of credibility. He's a little diminished in retirement because he's been pretty promiscuous about the way he's made money for his foundation and for himself. But at the same time, he is a serious, capable, credible person acceptable to both the Israelis and the Arabs. He lends a bit of prestige. I mean, it looks good. I mean, forgive my terrible world-weary cynicism, but, you know, you remember how good the Oslo Accords looked as well. But on the other hand, you can't despair. You can't just say, well, there's never going to be any forward movement. We've all just got to grin and bear it. I think this is a pretty good offer. But, of course, even if it's accepted, implementing it will be enormously difficult. Now, let me draw to your attention what the obvious first difficulty will be. So say Hamas accepts this and Israel conducts a partial withdrawal. The Hamas guys lay down their weapons and go off and live in Qatar or somewhere else. And then the international administration gets up and running and a lot of aid comes in and so forth. there are still going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of Gazan young men who believe in the Islamist ideology and who believe that Jews are a plague upon the earth.
And who are traumatised by this very conflict, or radicalised at least.
Yeah, that's true, but I don't think you can be mechanistic that way. You know, the IRA was traumatised by 800 years of British occupation, but they didn't have a profound ideology that the British were the work of the devil. So when they made peace, you know, and the Republic of Ireland became one of the most peaceful, law-abiding states in the history of the world. But this Islamist ideology is a very dynamic, proactive, serious, long-running ideology and movement with deep historical roots, you know, long before the Muslim Brotherhood, but given a modern application by the Muslim Brotherhood. Now they believe that Americans are the work of the devil, but they believe that Jews are particularly an element of evil in the world. Now, the point I'm making is these young guys will still be in Gaza. And at some point or other, one of them will say, I'm going to find glory by killing some Jews. Now, what happens then with the International Stabilisation Force? Does an Indonesian soldier or a Jordanian soldier or a Qatari soldier or a Turkish soldier shoot a Palestinian terrorist to prevent them attacking Israel? Because if they don't, the Israelis will. And, you know, peacekeeping forces in the Middle East are good tourists and they sometimes play a symbolic role, but they have no history of actually enforcing anything. So that's not a reason not to give it a try, but that's going to be one of the moments of truth. And Netanyahu said in the White House press conference, Israel would retain security responsibility for the foreseeable future. So after October 7, Israel is not going to let Gazan terrorists come and murder Israeli civilians. But preventing that will be a huge task for the international force. You can rest assured that the Palestinian leader who makes peace with Israel will be a number one target for Islamist terrorists. And so far, we haven't seen anyone brave enough to paint that target on their back.
Greg Sheridan is The Australian's foreign editor. You can read all Greg's analysis, plus the takes from our experts around the world, and keep up with every development in this conflict anytime at theaustralian.com.au.